What if the heaviest burden you carry is not what happened to you, but the memory of a choice you can never undo? Have you ever noticed how the mind loves to wander into the cemetery of what if? We spend years carrying the ghost of an unlived life, a decision made in a split second, or a path chosen years ago, now haunts the quietest corners of our minds. We replay it, we negotiate with it, we punish ourselves for it. But most of your suffering is not caused by the choice you made. It is caused by how tightly you are holding on to the fantasy of what might have been. If you have ever felt trapped by regret, exhausted by looking backward, or haunted by a door you can no longer open, this is for you. Stay until the end, because the final lesson may change the way you see this pain forever. 1. The weight of the unlived life. Here is the truth few people want to face. The life you did not choose does not exist. It is a phantom, yet it feels more real than the ground beneath your feet. We all do this. You choose a career, a partner, a city, or you walk away from one, and suddenly the alternative becomes perfect. We imagine that if we had only taken that other job, stayed in that relationship, or turned left instead of right, everything would be flawless. We compare our messy, imperfect reality to a flawless dream that never had to face the friction of the real world. You lie awake, replaying the conversation. You look at your current life and secretly resent it, not because it is bad, but because it is not the impossible dream you let slip away. Buddhist wisdom teaches us about the nature of attachment. Often, we think of attachment as clinging to physical things or to people, but the most dangerous attachment is clinging to a memory, or worse, an illusion. In Buddhist thought, suffering is simply the gap between how things are and how we demand them to be. When you obsess over a past choice, you are demanding that time flow backward. You are fighting a quiet war against reality, and reality always wins. Imagine a man standing on the edge of a deep river. He dropped a precious stone into the rushing water years ago. Instead of walking along the bank, instead of feeling the sun on his face or finding new stones, he stands in that exact spot, staring into the dark water, demanding that the river return what it took. The river cannot flow backward, but by refusing to step away, the man is drowning on dry land. We do this with our daily lives. You stare at the river when you sit at your desk, bitter that you did not take a risk in your youth. You stare at the river when you replay a falling out with a friend, trying to rewrite the words in your head. You let the ghost of a past decision steal the warmth of the life you actually have today. Ask yourself, what river are you still standing beside? What choice are you still punishing yourself for? Is this thought bringing you peace or feeding your fear? Pause, breathe, observe the heavy feeling in your chest. When you think of that choice, let the feeling rise without making it your identity. You are allowed to feel sorrow for the path not taken, but you do not have to live inside that sorrow forever. Because peace is not found by finally solving the puzzle of the past. It is found by making space for the present. But letting go of a past choice is impossible if you still believe the past is a place you can secretly return to. And this is where the next truth begins. 2. The illusion of the past's solid ground. What if the past you are trying to change was never as solid as you believe it to be? Here is a difficult truth. You are not holding on to the past. You are holding on to an echo. When we are haunted by a choice, we treat the past as if it were a physical room we can simply walk back into. We believe that if we just think about it hard enough, if we analyze all the angles, we can finally solve the mistake. You tell yourself, I should have known better. You replay a painful argument with someone you loved, convinced that if you had just swallowed your pride, the empty chair across from you would not be empty today. You stare at an opportunity you did not take, and you map out exactly how you could have avoided your current struggles. We mistakenly believe the past is a solid foundation we must repair before we can move forward. But Buddhism reminds us of a fundamental truth: impermanence. Everything is in constant motion, constantly arising and passing away. The past you are obsessing over no longer exists anywhere except in your mind. It is a mental formation, a story you are telling yourself right now in the present moment. One of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is that suffering arises when we take what is formless and try to make it solid. When you try to grasp the past, you are trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. Imagine a traveler walking across a vast, snow-covered field. After miles of walking, they realize they took a wrong turn at the edge of a forest. Frustrated and heavy with regret, they turn around. They look at their footprints trailing far behind them in the snow. Believing they must fix the mistake, they try to walk backward, carefully placing their boots perfectly into the old tracks, trying to retrace their steps to find the exact moment they went wrong. But the wind is howling, the snow is falling, the tracks are already fading, and while they are entirely focused on walking backward, they stumble blindly into the freezing storm ahead of them. How often are you walking backward through your own life? You sit in a quiet room, completely safe, yet your mind is trapped in a mistake you made 5 years ago. You let a missed opportunity from your youth dictate your worth today. You compare your current struggles to a fading footprint, completely blind to the open sky right in front of you. Ask yourself, are you trying to walk backward in a snowstorm? What are you afraid will happen if you finally look forward? Pause, breathe. Gently bring your attention to your hands. Feel the air moving in your lungs. This breath is the only real thing. The only solid ground you have is right here, right now. You do not need to fix the past to be whole today. Let the echo fade. Let the snow cover the tracks. Because the more you fight with yesterday, the more you abandon today. You cannot heal by trying to rewrite a story that has already ended. But realizing the past is an illusion does not instantly remove the pain. In fact, it often reveals a deeper, more immediate ache. And this is where the next truth begins. Because beneath every lingering regret is a subtle choice you are making right now to keep the wound open. 3. The suffering of the second arrow. What if the pain you feel today is not from the choice you made, but from your refusal to forgive yourself for making it? Here is a truth that is hard to swallow. The original decision only happened once. You are the one choosing to relive it every single day. When we regret a path we took, we rarely just acknowledge the mistake and move on. We weaponize it. We wake up in the middle of the night and call ourselves foolish. We look at friends who seem ahead in life and use their success as proof of our failure. We replay the exact moment we made the choice, analyzing it endlessly, trying to punish the past version of ourselves into becoming someone else. Buddhist wisdom teaches a profound lesson about this exact kind of pain. It is known as the teaching of the two arrows. In Buddhist thought, when a painful event occurs, a loss, a mistake, a wrong turn, it is like being struck by an arrow. It hurts. This is the unavoidable pain of being human. But then, we react, we judge ourselves, we obsess over how unfair it is. We demand to know why it happened. This reaction is the second arrow. And this second arrow is one we shoot directly into our own hearts. Imagine a small boat moving through rough water. A sudden violent wave crashes against the side, cracking a piece of the hull. This is the first arrow. The wave came, the damage was done, but the boat is still floating. Instead of bailing the water and gently steering toward the shore, the sailor drops the anchor in the middle of the dark, freezing sea. He sits in the cold, staring at the cracked wood. He curses the storm. He curses his own hands for not steering better. He refuses to sail onward until he can magically undo the wave. The boat slowly sinks, not because of the wave, but because the sailor chose to stay in the storm. We do this every time we refuse to accept our own history. You made a decision that set you back. The lost time was the first arrow. Waking up every morning feeling deeply behind in life because of it, that is the second arrow. A relationship ended badly because you held on too tightly. The heartbreak was the first arrow. Believing you will always ruin good things, that is the second arrow. Ask yourself, are you still bleeding from the first arrow, or are you holding the bow that shoots the second? How many times will you punish yourself for a moment that has already passed? Pause, breathe. Notice the heavy, harsh words you speak to yourself. Let them rise and then let them fall. You do not have to shoot the second arrow today. You do not need to keep breaking your own heart to prove you learned your lesson, because peace is not the absence of mistakes. It is the quiet choice to drop the bow. You are not powerless. You can stop fighting the ghost of your own decisions, but to do that, you must finally look at the ghost clearly. And this is where the next truth begins, because the mind loves to build monuments to the things that never happened. 4. The ghost of what if. What if the life you are mourning never existed at all? Here is a truth that is quiet but piercing. The alternate reality you dream of is a perfect lie. When we are haunted by an unmade choice, we construct entire parallel universes in our heads. In that other life, the one where you took the different job, or moved to another city, or walked away sooner, you imagine that everything is flawless. We quietly assume that the other path had no pain, no struggles, and no lonely nights. We look at the choice we actually made, and we compare our real, messy, difficult moments to a fantasy that never had to face the friction of the real world. You feel an agonizing pressure to succeed, fueled by the terrifying thought that you ruined your one true chance at happiness. Buddhist wisdom teaches us about the danger of the comparing mind. Mindfulness is the gentle practice of seeing things exactly as they are, without adding our own stories to them. But the mind loves to attach itself to illusions. The what if is not a real place. It is a mental projection. Buddhism reminds us that when we compare the very real, breathing present moment to an imagined perfection, we suffer deeply. We reject reality for a shadow. Imagine a traveler standing in front of a locked door in the middle of a vast, open field. On the front of the door, someone has painted a breathtaking picture of a golden paradise. The traveler stands there for years, violently shaking the handle, weeping because they cannot get inside. But the door is not attached to a house. It is not attached to walls. It is just a wooden door standing alone in the grass. The paradise is only painted on the surface. If the travelers simply let go of the handle and walked around it, they would see the real world stretching out in every direction, full of actual sunlight and wind. But they are entirely captivated by the paint. This is what we do when we obsess over the ghost of what if. You sit in your home, exhausted by the fear of failure, feeling an invisible weight because you are convinced you chose the wrong path. You let a quiet morning be ruined by the thought of the relationship you abandoned. You compare yourself to a version of you that does not exist. You shake the handle of a painted door, demanding entrance to a life that only lives in your imagination. Ask yourself, how much of today's joy are you sacrificing to stare at a painted door? Is the life you are grieving a real memory or a perfect illusion? Pause, breathe. Catch yourself the next time your mind wanders to what might have been. Do not fight the thought, but do not invite it to stay. Let it drift past you like clouds drifting across the sky. Stop trying to force the door open, because peace is not found by finally stepping into a perfect alternate reality. It is found by softly landing right where you are, but landing in the present requires you to stop waiting for the past to change. And this is where the next truth begins. Because before you can embrace what remains, you must learn how to properly say goodbye to what never was. 5. Grieving the door that closed. What if your inability to let go is not a sign of weakness, but an unexpressed grief? Here is the truth we often avoid. We keep the wound open because the pain is the last remaining connection to the dream we lost. When a deeply desired path is no longer possible, when a door slams shut, we rarely stop to mourn it. We try to intellectualize the loss. We tell ourselves we should just move on, focus on the positive, and be grateful for what we have. But beneath that forced positivity is a quiet, heavy sadness. We realize that a specific version of the future is gone forever. Whether it was an expectation of where you would be by a certain age, a relationship you thought would last a lifetime, or a path you poured your soul into. By refusing to properly grieve the loss, we trap the sorrow inside. We carry it as bitterness. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that attachment is not just about holding on to what we love. We can also become deeply attached to our own suffering. But Buddhism also offers the practice of deep acceptance. Acceptance does not mean you are happy about what happened. It does not mean the choice was fair. It simply means acknowledging, with profound honesty, that things are exactly as they are right now. Letting go is not the violent act of throwing a memory away. It is the gentle release of a tight grip. Imagine a mighty tree at the edge of winter. As the air turns freezing, the tree does not expend all its energy trying to glue the dead, brown leaves back onto its branches. It does not look at the bare limbs and consider itself a failure. It knows that to survive the dark months, it must let the dead leaves fall to the soil. The tree accepts the season. It stands quietly in the cold, resting, trusting that letting go is the only way to make room for new green buds in the spring. How much of your energy is spent trying to glue dead leaves back onto the branches of your life? You lie awake, trying to force an old connection to feel the way it used to. You feel a heavy guilt because your current reality does not match the grand plan you wrote for yourself a decade ago. You refuse to let the season change. You are holding onto a branch that has already snapped. Ask yourself, what dead leaf are you still clinging to? Have you ever simply allowed yourself to cry for the life you did not get to live? Pause. Breathe. Give yourself permission to mourn the closed door. Stop trying to pretend it does not hurt. Let the sorrow move through you like a passing rain. You are allowed to miss what could have been. But you do not have to live in the graveyard of your own expectations. Because true peace is not the absence of sadness. It is the quiet courage to let the season change. But letting the season change means looking honestly at the person who brought you here. And this is where the next truth begins. Because you cannot make peace with your life if you are still at war with yourself. 6. Forgiving the version of you who made the choice. What if the person you are most angry with is a version of yourself that no longer exists? Here is a quiet truth. You are holding a trial, but the defendant has already left the room. When we look back at a choice we deeply regret, we do something incredibly unfair. We judge our past selves with the wisdom we only gained because of that exact mistake. We are furious that our younger self was scared, desperate, or blind to the outcome. We look at the relationships we broke, the safe paths we took, out of fear, or the years we spent trying to force the wrong thing to work. We call ourselves foolish. We refuse to offer ourselves the grace we would easily give to a struggling friend. You demand to know why you did not see the truth then, forgetting that you did not have the eyes you have now. Buddhist wisdom teaches the profound practice of deep compassion, but true compassion must begin within. In Buddhist thought, the self is not a fixed, unchanging stone. It is a continuous, moving flow. The person who made that choice years ago was operating with the exact tools, the heavy fears, and the limited understanding they had in that precise moment. Buddhism reminds us that clinging to anger against ourselves is like drinking poison and hoping the past will suffer. Imagine a small seed planted deep in the earth, surrounded by complete darkness. It pushes through the heavy soil, blindly reaching for what it believes is the sun. In its desperate need to grow, it wraps its roots tightly around a sharp, cold rock, mistaking it for a source of water. Years later, it has grown into a strong, tall tree, standing firmly in the light. But instead of feeling the warm sun on its leaves, the tree looks down at its roots and is furious at the seed. It resents the seed for wrapping around the rock. It forgets that the seed was blind, frightened, and only trying to survive the dark. We do this every time we look backward with hatred. You sit in your room today, secure and wiser, and you punish the version of you who was just trying to survive a season of intense anxiety. You resent the version of yourself who people pleased to keep the peace, forgetting how terrified that person was of being completely alone. You expect your past self to have had the strength you only possess today. Ask yourself, are you demanding perfection from a past version of you that was simply doing their best to survive the dark? Can you look at the person who made that choice and finally say, I understand? Pause, breathe, place a hand over your heart. Send one quiet thought of forgiveness backward through time. Let that past version of you finally rest. You do not need to keep punishing them, because peace is not about proving you were right. It is about understanding why you were wrong, without breaking your own spirit. You cannot heal the present by endlessly attacking the past, but forgiveness is only a release. To truly step forward, you must let go of the idea that your mistake ruined your one true destiny. And this is where the next truth begins, because the mind loves to convince you that the broken path was a failure when it was actually the only way through. 7. The myth of the wrong path. What if the mistake you are agonizing over was actually the exact road you needed to walk? Here is the truth that shatters our illusion of control. There is no wrong path. There is only the path you are on. When we are haunted by a past choice, we operate under a terrifying assumption. We believe that destiny is a single, fragile thread. We treat our lives like a tightrope walk, convinced that one awkward step, one bad decision, or one wrong turn will send us falling into the abyss, ruining the entire performance forever. We look at a failed project, a painful separation, or a detour that took years of our lives, and we panic. We feel a crushing weight, a sense of being permanently behind in life, entirely convinced we missed our true calling because we made a left turn instead of a right. Buddhist wisdom offers a profound relief from this crushing pressure. It teaches us that the universe is not a rigid map with only one correct destination. In Buddhist thought, everything is interconnected. Every action, every pain, and every joy weaves together to create the present moment. Buddhism reminds us that the lotus flower does not grow in clear, sterile water. It only blooms out of the thick, dark mud. The mud was never a mistake. It was the absolute necessity for the flower to rise. Imagine a great river flowing down from a high mountain, moving toward the vast ocean. The river does not move in a perfectly straight line. It bends, it curves backward. Sometimes it crashes violently against heavy boulders, and sometimes it pools quietly in a shallow, muddy bank, appearing entirely stuck. If you only look at the stuck water, you might think the river has failed its journey. You might think it took the wrong path. But the river does not worry about the rocks or the sharp turns. It simply continues to flow, carving through the earth, yielding to the terrain. Every violent crash, every long detour, and every quiet pool is part of the same water inevitably reaching the sea. We do this with our own deeply personal timelines. You feel a heavy shame because your life does not look the way you planned at a certain age. You feel emotionally exhausted because a relationship collapsed, and you believe you wasted your best years on the wrong person. You stare at your current reality and call it a failure, simply because it took a sharp, painful bend you did not anticipate. You are convinced you ruined the journey, forgetting that the bend is part of the river. Ask yourself, are you punishing the river for bending? What if the detour you resent so deeply is the very thing that is giving you your depth? Is it possible that you did not ruin the plan, but simply outgrew it? Pause, breathe, release the heavy need to be perfectly on schedule, let the fear of being behind rise, and then let it wash away. You are exactly where the water has brought you. You have not ruined your life, because true peace is not found by finding a perfectly straight line. It is found by trusting the current of the water you are in. You cannot permanently break your life with a single choice, because life is too vast to be shattered by one detour. But accepting the path you are on means you must finally look around at what is actually here right now, and this is where the next truth begins. Because you can never fully enter the present if your eyes are still fixed on the past. 8. Returning to the life that remains. What if the life you are ignoring right now is the exact life you once prayed for? Here is a quiet, challenging truth. While you are busy mourning the path you did not take, you are abandoning the beautiful breathing reality of what is still here. When we are consumed by regret, a strange apathy takes over. We look at our current reality, our quiet routines, the people who love us, the small comforts we have built, and we feel a heavy, emotional flatness. We go through the motions of our days like ghosts. We drink our morning coffee, we commute, we answer messages, but we are not truly inhabiting our bodies. We are fundamentally absent. We are waiting for a sudden wave of magic to wash over us and fix everything, not realizing that life is quietly passing us by while we stare at the closed door. Buddhist wisdom teaches the profound practice of presence. It is often misunderstood as merely feeling calm, but true mindfulness is the radical act of being fully here, even when here is not where you originally wanted to be. In Buddhist thought, the present moment is the only dimension where true living actually occurs. The past is a mental projection, the future is an unwritten illusion, but this single breath is real. When you reject the present because it does not match your fantasy, you sever your connection to life itself. You starve the present moment of your light. Imagine a traveler who has sought shelter in a small, sturdy cabin during a bitter winter storm. Inside, there is a glowing fire, dry wood, and a comfortable place to rest. But instead of sitting by the hearth, the traveler stands shivering by the icy window, weeping because they lost a precious silver ring out in the deep snow. They stare out into the howling wind for days, entirely focused on what is buried. They do not feel the warmth of the fire. They do not notice the thick wooden walls keeping them safe from the ice. They are physically inside, but their spirit is out in the freezing dark, shivering alongside a piece of metal they cannot ever recover. How often are you standing by the cold window in your own life? You sit next to someone who loves you, but your mind is miles away, agonizing over a past setback. You lie in a safe, warm bed, but your heart is racing with the fear of falling behind your peers. You let a quiet, peaceful Sunday slip through your fingers because you are too busy comparing your messy reality to someone else's perfect illusion. You are missing the warmth of the fire because you cannot stop staring at the snow. Ask yourself, what quiet, beautiful things in your life are currently starving for your attention? Who is sitting in the room with you, waiting for you to finally arrive? What would happen if you simply turned your back to the window and faced the fire? Pause, breathe, look around the room you are in right now. Let your eyes rest on something entirely ordinary, a cup, a shadow on the wall, a sliver of light. Anchor yourself to the solid reality of this exact second. You do not need to love every single aspect of your life to be fully present for it. You just need to show up, because peace is not found by eventually building a flawless reality. It is found by softly and bravely inhabiting the reality you already have. You can choose to be here, but to truly embrace the life that remains, you must completely let go of the story you have been telling yourself about how it all went wrong. And this is where the final truth begins, because the way you end the story changes everything. 9. Making peace with the story. What if the ultimate freedom is realizing you never had to be perfect to be worthy of a beautiful life? Here is the quiet truth that brings all of this together. The choice you made did not ruin your story, it merely turned the page. We began this journey by looking at the ghost of the unlived life. We explored the heavy weight of what if that haunts our quietest hours. For so long, you have carried the belief that a single decision shattered your true destiny. You have spent years secretly negotiating with a past you cannot touch, convinced that if you could just go back and choose the other path, you would finally be safe, successful, and completely at peace. But as we have seen, the past is not a solid room you can walk back into. It is a fading echo in the snow. And every moment you spend trying to walk backward into that echo is a moment you steal from the beautiful, breathing reality standing right in front of you. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that suffering is born from our resistance to what is. When we fight the reality of our own history, we shoot the second arrow into our own hearts. We become the sailor, dropping the anchor in the storm, refusing to sail onward. But letting go of a past choice is not about erasing your memory. It is not about forcing yourself to feel joyful about a painful loss or a closed door. Letting go is the gentle, profound act of acceptance. It is looking at the path that ended and finally saying, "That way is closed, but I am still here." Think of the river carving its way through the heavy mountain. The water does not apologize for bending. It does not look back at the rocks it crashed against and consider itself a failure. The tree does not grieve the dead leaves. It must drop to survive the dark winter. Nature does not carry the burden of regret. It simply yields to the present moment. It heals. It grows toward whatever light is available today. You are a part of that same nature. You are allowed to adapt. You do not have to carry the ghost of who you might have been any longer. You can gently lay that heavy burden down by the side of the road. You must forgive the version of you who made that choice. They were doing the best they could in the dark. They brought you here, to this exact breath. The detours, the mistakes, the lost time, they were not a waste. They were the deep mud from which your lotus flower is currently blooming. You have gained a profound empathy, a quiet resilience, and a depth of understanding that you never would have found on the easy, straight path. Ask yourself, are you ready to stop fighting the ghost? Are you ready to let the unlived life gracefully fade away so you can finally sit by the fire of the life that remains? The choice you made years ago is over. The pen is back in your hand. The rest of your story is yours to write, not from a place of punishing regret, but from a place of profound, grounded presence. You survived the closed doors. You survived the rough water. The storm has passed. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can let go now.